Is it possible to be afraid of the body and still say we believe in God's omnipresence? Yes. Yes. Let's look. If God be omnipresent, then where is there a corner, a cell, a fiber, a sensation outside of that presence? Now tell me, if God is left out of even 1 square inch of our being, what kind of omnipresence is that? It isn't. It's a word without a law behind it. Therefore, the fear we feel, the startle in the night when a sensation arrests our peace, is not proof that the body is powerful. It is the flashing signal that, for a moment, we are believing in an absence of God right at the point where we most need to know God. I say a hard word, and I ask you to hear it as diagnosis, not as insult. Fear of the body is atheism. Not capital A creed atheism, practical atheism. The act of interpreting a sensation as if God weren't there. In other words, we are behaving as though life had stepped out of the room and left us with a machine that can rule us or betray us. That isn't true. It isn't true of you within range of my voice. It is a momentary eclipse of remembrance. A human being can't help that. A human being can't help that. Our training has been to consult matter as law and to call that prudence. All right. Let us speak in our shared humanity. You wake at 2 a.m, and there is a flutter, a pressure, a twinge. Before prayer rises, the hand is on the phone. The search bar opens, the tribunal convenes. Charts, metrics, prognoses, the little mental movie of decline and deadlines. We have all sat through that trial. We have all waited for the message, the test result, the callback. Do not let shame enter here. Don't forget this. Compassion is the atmosphere of healing. But compassion is not permission for error to sit on the throne. The error is this. We grant the body independent authority and let it speak to us as law. Now let us for a minute accept this statement. God is omnipresence, one presence, one power. If that is so, and it is, then the body cannot be a second power. The body can report, yes. It can register our beliefs and our fears. But decree? No, no. Authority belongs to the presence that is the life of us. So we will not deny thermometers, appointments, common sense. We will deny only this, that matter has jurisdiction over the life that is God. Fear doesn't prove the body is powerful. It proves we have temporarily assumed God is absent. That's the whole point of this opening hour. Right where the sensation appears, right where the thought shouts, there is God as the health of being. Unmoved, unthreatened, not arriving, present. And in the degree that we withdraw our faith from the report as law and rest it in the one presence, the storm loses a voice. This is not sensationalism. This is the first responsible step. Refuse 2 powers, and let omnipresence define the scene before you interpret it. Now we come to law. Not opinion, not my idea versus yours, but law. There are not 2 powers, God and body, God and disease, God and genetics, God and time. There is one presence, one power, and all that appears is within that. If God is omnipresent, where could a separate power stand? Where could it operate? Where could it hide? Behind a rib? Inside a lab report? In the hands of a clock? Where is there a corner of being external to omnipresence? There isn't. There can't be. To grant a second power is to write a fiction and then kneel before it. Now let us for a minute accept this statement. The body, as we use the word here, is not cause, It is effect. It is the visible report on the screen. It seems to speak, it seems to decree, but it has no law-making capacity. No, no. Law belongs to God, to Spirit, to the unseen presence that is the life of you and me. The body may register our fear or our peace, our superstition or our trust. It may mirror back to us the tones of our consciousness. But it cannot originate law, cannot add a line to the statute of life. The moment we forget this, the moment we let the image tell the projector what to play, we are in the two-power mistake. All right. See how quietly it enters. Not with a trumpet, not with a creed, but with an inward nod. Because this hurts, it has authority. Because that number moved, it is destiny. And in that nod, the crisis begins. We unconsciously accept two powers and let the body speak as law. We do not notice the swap. We were resting in one presence a moment ago. Now the chart is enthroned. Now the sensation is sovereign. Your mood drops or rises by the inch of a graph. Your hope expands or contracts by a decimal point. Tell me, what is that if not idolatry wearing a white coat? We don't bow before carved images. We bow before metrics. We wait for salvation not from God omnipresent, but from matter improved, matter corrected, matter consenting to our peace. Please hear me tenderly. This is not blame. This is exposure of a habit. A human being can't help that. A human being can't help that. We were trained to consult matter as law and to call that realism. But that training is not truth. The law is one power. If there is one power, then the body, pleasant or unpleasant, stable or unstable, has no veto over the life that is God. It can report, it cannot rule. It can alert, it cannot assign identity. Your name is not a diagnosis. Your future is not a prognosis. Your being does not hang on the swing of a hormone or the tick of a clock. Since God is the life of you, where could another life enter to compete? Since God is the health of you, where could another health or unhealth set up a rival throne? Now then, practice begins at this door. Catch the two-power suggestion the instant it whispers, "Here is a second authority." Ask it right there, if God is omnipresent, where do you stand? Where do you operate? Where do you hide? Let it answer. Silence. And in that silence, let the law resume its seat. One presence, one power. Let the report be a report, and let authority remain where it eternally is, in spirit. Now you come to a law. Not an idea to admire, but a law to live by. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. Don't skip past that. Don't put it with the quotations you liked and forgot. Take it as statute now. If there are no detached outer effects, then the body cannot be a first cause. It cannot decree. It can only display. It is a screen, not a sovereign. The authority is never on the screen. The authority is always in the light that projects, in the consciousness that interprets, in the presence that is the life of you. All right. Look at this in the everyday scene. Two people feel the same flutter, the same pressure. One plunges into panic. Breath shortens, time speeds, the future collapses into a single dark tunnel. The other notices it as one notices a doorbell. Oh, let me be still a moment. Same sensation, entirely different universe of experience. Tell me then, where was the power? In the flutter? If it were in the flutter, the result would be uniform. But it isn't. The result varies with the interpretation, with the atmosphere of consciousness meeting the report. A number on a scale says 5 pounds up. One mind reads doom, another reads noted. A scan returns a phrase. One runs 100 catastrophic movies. Another takes a breath and asks, "Father, what is the truth here?" The image on the screen is identical. The movie in the mind is not. Therefore, the power is not in the image. Now separate this very carefully. Sensation and conclusion are not the same event. Sensation may appear, a bell may ring, a light may blink. But the catastrophe story, that sprawling therefore, is optional. It is usually borrowed, inherited from the collective fear that talks through headlines, through family lore, through the 2 a.m. tribunal of memory. That is not law. That is suggestion. And suggestion has no power unless we sign it, notarize it, and post it on the door of our own being as decree. We have been quick with the pen. We have been quick to certify, this means that. Now we slow the hand. We ask, who told me to draw that line? Where did that conclusion get its badge? Your first reaction is, but I can't control this. That's not true. That's not true of anybody within range of my voice. A human being can't help the first bell, the first startle. A human being can't help that. But you can control what you grant authority to. You can refuse to let a report dress itself as a ruler. You can pause before you interpret. You can let the remembrance of one presence return to the room and let the story dissolve before it hardens into law. Even a breath, even a God is here, shifts the field from 2 powers to 1. Now then, if the body is an effect, not a cause, healing does not begin by ordering the screen to change. Healing begins by withdrawing our verdict that matter has power. We take back the badge we handed to sensation. We return jurisdiction to the omnipresent. We let the report report, and we let God decree. And in that simple reallocation, quiet, immediate, the picture begins to lose its terror. And sometimes, yes, the picture itself must change, because the light behind it has changed. Now look out at the altar we have built in our century. It isn't marble. It isn't cedar. It is a rectangle of light in the dark room at 2 in the morning. The phone glow on the sheets, on the face, on the ceiling. A word typed, another. The little suggestions falling down the screen like a priest's beads. And in 5 minutes, the path leads from mild to rare to aggressive to terminal. Do you know this hallway? Of course you do. The hand goes to the neck, pulse. To the wrist, pulse. To the temple, pulse. Then the cuff, pressure. The sensor, oxygen. The thermometer, again and again. Refresh, compare, ask, check. A friend, a forum, a stranger's story that becomes a mirror we cannot put down. All of that at the tribunal hour, when the room is loud with thoughts that don't belong to you. Now tell me, what is the prayer being offered? Is it to God? No, no. It is a liturgy before matter. Tell me, number, if I am safe. Tell me, graph, if I am loved by life or rejected. Tell me, device, if I will see my children grow, if I will fulfill my plan. That is prayer, only the altar is wrong. It is devotion to metrics, not resting in spirit. Health anxiety, in its honest confession, is not wickedness. It is misplaced worship. We wait for salvation to descend from a decimal point, to be granted by a pulse oximeter, to be certified by a search engine. And each repetition is not neutral. It is incantation in reverse. Refresh. Fear multiplies. Check. Fear consolidates. Ask. Fear recruits witnesses. Compare. Fear builds a case. Don't forget this. We have been quoting it every day this week and last week. There are no detached outer effects. The number is not a cause. The screen is not a sovereign. Yet fear, repeating itself mechanically, begins to look like law. The groove deepens. The heart hammers not because of the original flutter, but because the altar has been busy. A human being can't help the first startle. A human being can't help that. But we can help what we enthrone at 2 a.m. We can help what receives our kneeling. All right, let us be compassionate and exact. Of course you want to be responsible. Of course you want to know. Of course you will keep your appointments and take care of your duties. But ask yourself in the secrecy of your own being, what am I seeking in this moment? God or a verdict from matter? Am I turning to omnipresent life, or am I asking a figure to tell me whether life is present? If it is the second, you already know the fruit. The more you feed it, the larger it grows. The altar demands more offerings and still gives no peace. Why? Because peace does not come from effects. It comes from resting in cause. One presence, one power. Now then, the treatment is not a fistfight with data. We are not going to argue with a number or wrestle with a word on a screen. That only cements the two-power mistake. The treatment is a reallocation of authority. Put the phone down like one sets down a censer after a long smoke. Be still, not to get God to come, but to remember God is here. One statement, one realized truth is enough to break the spell of the tribunal. I and the Father are one. God is the health of my countenance. Where I am, God is. Let the breath lengthen. Let the remembrance spread. Let fear lose its job. Then, if there is an action to take, it will be given without panic, without idolatry, without bowing to a screen. But first, the altar must be cleared. Presence must resume the throne. And the room that held a trial becomes, quietly, a sanctuary. Now let us name the thing plainly, and hear it not as scolding, but as light. Fear is practical atheism. Not the certificate you sign at a club, not a philosophy you argue, no. It is an acted-out assumption. It is the moment you let a sensation tell you, God is not where you are as health. That is all it is, and that is all it does. And the correction will not come by shaming yourself for the startle. A human being can't help that. A human being can't help that. But we can help what we certify afterward. We can help whether we sign the absence as law or acknowledge presence as law. Now let us for a minute accept this statement. God here. God now. Not God later. Not God after the test. Not God if the numbers improve. God here as the very life of you. God now as the only law of being. If that is so, and it is, then every time we tremble before a report, we are bargaining. The subtle contract reads, I will believe God is present if my body behaves. Do you see the insult to your own soul? In that bargain, matter sits as judge, and God is dragged in as a defendant to produce evidence. Show yourself by the scan. Prove yourself by the pain receding. Convince me by a decimal point. No, no. That is idolatry in courtroom robes. God is not on trial in your bloodstream. God is the life that makes a bloodstream appear at all. All right, you say, but pain feels real. Of course it does. Of course. A siren is loud. A bell can ring your whole house. But a siren is not the city charter. A bell is not the law. Sensation can be intense. Let it be what it is, but do not promote it to sovereignty. Fear uses the volume of sensation to imitate authority. It is the cheap trick of the two-power lie. Because I am loud, I am law. That is not true. That is not true of anybody within range of my voice. Loud is not law. Startle is not statute. A wave breaking over the bow is not the ocean's government. You can be drenched and still be held. Now here is the spiritual diagnosis to carry into the next hour. When fear rises, it is not proof of danger. It is proof that for a moment you are interpreting as if God were absent. That is all. And because it is interpretation, it is revisable. Right there, before the story writes itself in bold, pause and reassign jurisdiction. God here. God now. Not to get God to come. Don't slip into that. To remember. To remember. To let remembrance be the atmosphere in which you read any report. And do it not once, not heroically for a minute and then surrender. Do it as practice, consciously, repeatedly, like breath, like the pulse, like walking down a hallway you know by heart. Don't forget this. Truth is not multiplied by many phrases. It is realized by one. One realized truth, lived, dissolves the contract with fear. Where I am, God is. That practiced in the moment of the bell. That whispered while the hand would otherwise reach for the screen. That held while the body reports whatever it reports. This is the end of practical atheism and the beginning of practice. Presence first. Presence before interpretation. Presence until fear has no job to do. And in that remembered atmosphere, health is not a favor begged from matter. Health is God as the life of you, present, unthreatened. Now let us come to the heart of this, and let it rest in us until it changes the way we breathe. We have been pleading. We have been bargaining. God, heal me. God, fix this. And while that seems holy, listen to what stands behind it. There is a little unspoken sentence. Health is somewhere outside, and if God is kind, it will be brought in and attached to this body. That is humanness. That is getting. That is standing at the door of matter like a beggar. And so we do not receive, because we already are. We are not importers of health. We are the outflow of health, because God is the life of us. Now let us for a minute accept this statement. God is the source of my being and the infinity of my being. Since I am one with my source, nothing can be added to me. Nothing. Not life, not safety, not health. All that the Father hath is mine, already mine. Tell me then, what do you need from the body? Nothing. Nothing. What do you need from fear? Nothing. Nothing. The moment you believe you need something from either, you have quietly shifted from oneness to two-ness, from source to supply chain, from presence to pursuit. And pursuit begets fear, and fear enthrones effects. All right, you say. But what do you mean when you say God is health? Not positive thinking, not denial, not whistling past a graveyard. No, God is health means this. There is one presence, one power, and it is the law, the life, the peace, the rhythm, the integrity of being right where you are. It is not a mood you work up. It is not a mantra you force. It is recognition, clear, quiet recognition, that omnipresence is the only presence on the scene. Therefore, health is not a condition to acquire. It is the nature of being revealing itself as you, in the degree that you stop placing health in matter and start acknowledging it in God. Don't forget this. The more you attempt to pull health out of flesh, the more you certify flesh as warehouse and you as customer. That is why the pleading grows frantic and the peace recedes. You have swapped roles with your own source. A human being can't help the first startle. A human being can't help that. But you can refuse the second step, the petition that treats God as supplier and matter as storage. Stand still in oneness. I and the Father are one. Not will be, not if the test improves. One. Now then, what is the practice? It is not wrestling the symptom. Wrestling the symptom is just more attention to a screen. The practice is withdrawing your consent from the belief that health is housed in matter. How? By reassigning identity in the instant of temptation. I am not a body trying to get health. I am life expressing as this being. God is the health of my countenance. Say it softly. Say it once. Say it until the inner hand sets down the toolbox and the shoulders drop from their vigil. Presence first. Presence until the frightened searcher has nothing left to do. In that atmosphere, action becomes simple. If there is a step to take, it is given, it is not hunted. If there is rest to take, it is trusted, it is not argued. The strain to get is replaced by the grace to let. Let what? Let what already is be seen. Let what cannot be added to you reveal itself as you. And then, quietly, the body does what screens do when the light behind them is clear. It reports more peace. But even before the picture shifts, the spell is broken, because the throne is occupied. God as health, here, now, ends the pilgrimage to the warehouse and returns you to the home you never left. Now we come to the emergency hour. And do not make it dramatic. It doesn't need theater. It needs law. Don't forget this. We have been quoting it every day this week and last week. Truth cannot be multiplied, and it cannot be divided. Why? Truth is one. Therefore, one statement of truth contains all the truth there is in the world, if you will let it be realized. At 2 in the morning, you do not need a library. You do not need 7 books, 12 verses, 20 affirmations. Now tell me, how many truths do you need when fear knocks? 1. 1. All right, you say. But which one? Listen. Any one you can love in that moment. Not magic words, doorways. God is here. There is no power opposed to God. I and the Father are one. Take 1, not 3, not a chain, 1. Hold it like you would a child's hand crossing a busy street, not to drag the child, to keep together, to stay one. Now the mind objects. But I don't feel it. That's not the question. That's not the question for anybody within range of my voice. The question is, will you practice it until fear yields? Feeling is the caboose, truth is the engine. The statement is not repeated to persuade God. God needs no persuading. The statement is repeated to dissolve the hypnotism of a second power, to clear the blur on the lens, to seat authority where it belongs. Whisper it, don't hammer it. God is here. Let the breath match it. There is no power opposed to God. Let the shoulders release against it. I and the Father are one. Let the frantic searcher retire, dismissed without pay. A human being can't help the first startle. A human being can't help that. But we can help whether we run down every hall of fear's hospital, or whether we pause in the doorway and let one realized truth take the witness stand. Do not bargain with the sensation. Do not explain to it. Do not ask it for permission to be at peace. Return to your one sentence and wait in it until the inner axis clicks back into place. It may be 30 seconds. It may be 3 minutes. Time is not your ruler. Presence is. Now then, what happens next is simple. In that quiet, if an action is given, call, go, rest, take the test, you take it without idolatry, without enthroning the report as law. Because the spell of two powers has been broken, you can stand in one presence and move through the world with responsibility and without fear's leash. One truth, practiced, has done its work. It has reseated sovereignty. And from there, whatever you touch remains under God, not under metrics, not under memories, not under tomorrow. One is enough. Yes, one is enough. Now we come to integration. And do not let it frighten you. Spiritual practice is not neglect. It is not bravado. It is not, I will prove something to someone by refusing help. No, no. It is the right placing of authority. God first, omnipresence enthroned as law. Then any human step that is given, taken as instrument, not as master. Do you see the order? First, the inner seat. I and the Father are one. Then, in that quiet, if a call is to be made, if a test is to be taken, if a habit is to be changed, it is done under God, not under fear. The same act outwardly, entirely different government inwardly. Now let us speak plainly and set the ethic in the room. We will not be seeking security in numbers, in diagnoses, in prognoses, in graphs, in forums, in famous names, in second opinions gathered like trophies. We will be seeking the kingdom, consciousness of omnipresence. We will not bow to metrics as saviors, to devices as priests, to schedules as law. We will bow to God, here, now, and then let numbers, devices, and schedules take their modest place as servants. We will not wait for matter to certify life. We will let life interpret matter. We will not delay peace until a decimal moves. We will abide in peace and let the decimal speak what it may. All right, you say. But what of prudence? Prudence is lovely when it is not idolatry. Take the test if you are led. Receive the care if it is given. Adjust the diet, the rest, the stride of your day if wisdom whispers it. But do not surrender your throne. Listening is not surrendering. To listen is to let God govern the scene and to move as you are moved, without terror, without bargaining, without enthroning the report. A thermometer is a messenger. It is not a monarch. A scan is an image. It is not a statute. A pill is a tool. It is not a god. A hammer can build, but it is not the architect. The architect is the mind that orders, the presence that is health itself. Now I must say this for the sake of many within range of my voice. Shame is not medicine. Self-blame is not prayer. If you trembled and Googled last night, be tender with that. A human being can't help the first startle. A human being can't help that. The correction is not punishment. It is gentle persistence. This morning you reseat authority. This minute you say, God here, God now. You take your step from peace, not toward peace. You decline the second power again and again and again, until the groove of fear is no longer the road you travel by night. Now then, what happens as this becomes your habit? The body ceases to be a tyrant and becomes a transparent servant of harmony. It reports what is placed upon it, and when fear is not placed upon it, when omnipresence is the atmosphere of interpretation, the report softens, the edges round, the alarms quiet. Even when a correction is needed, it is not a crisis. It is a detail. You are not hauled before the tribunal at 2 a.m. You are held within a kingdom that does not close. And from that kingdom you act, responsibly, kindly, promptly when prompted, yet never granting matter the final word. Authority remains where it belongs, and your steps, however ordinary, become the outflow of the one extraordinary fact. God is the health of my being, and all that I do under God. Now we come to the pivot itself, the instant, the shout, the bell. Don't make it complicated. Don't turn it into a ritual that needs incense and an hour. It is a movement of authority, and it can happen between one breath and the next. The sequence is simple, and we will say it together until it lives in your nerves. Stop. Notice. Name the two-power claim. Return to omnipresence. Rest. Then act if guided. That is all. That is enough. All right. The portal pings. Your result is available. Feel the hand reach. Stop. Not forever. For a breath. For a moment long enough to catch the first reflex and let it pass without deputizing it. Notice. My heart jumped. My mind is running ahead. Name the two-power claim. Here is fear saying, the number on that page has law. Here is the suggestion that matter will now pronounce a decree about life. Return to omnipresence. Ask, out loud if you must, where is God right now? If God is here, what is fear talking about? If omnipresence fills this room, can another power enter to rule it? Rest. A minute. A half-minute. The felt posture of serene hands folded, not to get an answer from the sight, but to remember you already live in the answer. Then act if guided. Open it if you are led, under God, not under panic. Or wait for the morning if that is the wisdom that rises. The act is the same outwardly. The throne is different inwardly. Now the physician pronounces a word. Mass. Hear the bell without abandoning your seat. Stop. Notice the surge. Name the claim. This word pretends to be a lawgiver. Return it once. God here. God now. There is no power opposed to God. Rest. Eyes open. Jaw loose. Stay home within yourself while the room continues. Ask quietly, Father, what is the truth here? Then act if guided. Questions, referrals, steps, taken as instruments, not as gods. You have refused exile. You have stayed where law sits. In the dark, you wake with pain, sharp, insistent. A human being can't help the first startle. A human being can't help that. But we can help the next 5 seconds. Stop. Do not sprint down the corridors of yesterday's stories. Notice. Sensation here, fear rising there. Name the claim. This pain says, I am a second power. Return. I and the Father are one. God is the health of my countenance. Rest. Let the breath lengthen until the body knows it is not on trial. Then act if guided. Heat, call, stillness, medicine. Whatever wisdom gives, given without bowing to the pain as sovereign. Don't forget this. There are no detached outer effects. What follows your pause is not magic. It is law resuming its place. In the pause, you revoke the authority you unconsciously handed to a word, a number, a sensation. You let law be law. One presence. One power. In that remembered atmosphere, the next step reveals itself without terror's leash. Now then, make the sequence yours. Say it softly when the bell rings. Stop, notice, name, return, rest, act if guided. Let serene I fold my hands and wait be not a sentence on a page, but a felt attitude in the ribs and shoulders. A minute only, but a true minute in which panic is not fed, in which the search engine is not enthroned, in which you live as if God is where you are, because God is. And hear this as we widen the circle. Fear is contagious, and peace is contagious. Your settledness in the exam room steadies the nurse who has seen 4 storms before yours. Your quiet in the house steadies a child who has learned to read adult faces as weather. Your non-idolatry of metrics loosens the world's grip on its altars by one finger. We are not islands. We are atmosphere. As you practice the inner pivot in real time, you are not only relieved, you are radiating a different government. And the body, yours, theirs, the world's, begins quietly to report it. Now let us widen the lens. When I say body, do not stop at your skin. The age has a body, a great screen of headlines, alerts, charts, rumor, prediction. It has nerves, the ticker, the breaking banner, the forwarded message that arrives like a siren. And if there are no detached outer effects, don't forget this, then that world body is also a report, not a ruler, a screen, not a sovereign. It is the collective picture of what we are consenting to believe, and fear, repeated, refreshed, rehearsed, prints itself there with a confidence it has not earned. All right, you say, but I'm only one. Don't begin with arithmetic. Begin with law. Consciousness is causal. One life lived in one presence is not numerically small, it is lawfully potent. Participate in mass fear and you loan it your breath, your words, your attention. You act as if matter were a second power with jurisdiction over your peace. Refuse fear, not as denial, not as neglect, but as fidelity to one power, and you cut one of its wires. You take back one amplifier. You withdraw one loudspeaker from the square. That is not ignorance. That is spiritual integrity. That is refusing to pray at the public altar of panic. Now look quietly at your day. The household is a climate. The office is a climate. The market line, the classroom, the waiting room. Climates. In the degree that you are settled, God here, God now, there is a felt moderation in the air. You don't preach it. You don't correct anyone's sentence. Your very non-haste, Your refusal to borrow tomorrow's disaster becomes permission for others to come down from the ledge. The conversation that was galloping slows. The meeting that was a tribunal becomes a table again. The child reading your face reads whether they can trust. Tell me where the power was. Was it in the rumor, or in the presence that would not lend it panic? If it were in the rumor, all would fall alike. But they don't. Why? Because consciousness interprets and externalizes, and fearless consciousness blesses without fanfare. Now a sober word. Do not argue with fear in others. Do not make speeches at the dinner table to show what you know. That is still two powers meeting on the same field, and it wastes the night. A human being can't help the first startle. A human being can't help that. Let them have it, and you take your seat. Stabilize your own consciousness first. Let calm be the communication. If a sentence is asked of you, offer a small one. One step at a time. We'll take wise care. God is here. Then be done and hold. Holding is louder than insisting. Silence under God says more than paragraphs on the virtues of peace. All right, you ask. But can this ripple out? Yes. Yes. Inside of 30, 60, 90 days of faithful refusal to lend fear your altar, the tone in your house shifts. The tone in your work shifts. You find less appetite for dread disguised as news, and those around you begin, without knowing why, to breathe. This is not magic. It is law. There are no detached outer effects. Now then, see the trajectory. We began with the body and the startle. We learned to withdraw authority from matter and to stand in one presence. We watched the air clear at home and over a desk. The conclusion, when we speak it, will not be about bodies at all. It will be about Christ, the fearless consciousness that knows one power, one presence, and lives as if God is where we are, because God is. We are almost there. Stay with me in that remembrance. Now we speak the word that closes the circle, and let it not be theory, but bread. Christ is not a person for you to admire across centuries while you tremble here. No. Christ is a state of consciousness, a fearless awareness of one presence, one power, one life, that does not fear or hate externals, because it knows no external can stand outside omnipresence. Christ is the mind that refuses two powers, that will not bow to rumor or report, that reads the screen and stays with the light behind it. In other words, Christ is the realized truth. I and the Father are one, abiding as you. Now let us set the final corrective, so there is no more argument at 2 in the morning. The body is not your God, and not your enemy. The body is not a lawgiver, and it is not a devil to be cast out. It is an avenue, a transparency, a place where the harmony of God may be witnessed in the degree that you refuse idolatry and dwell in one presence. When you despise the body, you enthrone it by hatred. When you worship the body, you enthrone it by fear. Neither is necessary. Withdraw authority from matter, seat authority in God, and let the body be what it is, a servant reporting the government under which you live. All right, here is the call, private and immediate. Go home. If necessary, sit up all night, and let this be settled. One power, one presence, one life. Not next week, now. Settle it where no one hears you. Fight it through inside yourself until you can say without bargaining, "Where I am, God is." and mean it more than you mean the bell on your phone. If tears are there, let them. A human being can't help the first startle. A human being can't help that. But you can help what you sign as law. Sign omnipresence. Keep the practice simple. Choose one truth statement and stay with it daily, especially as you fall asleep and as you wake, when the clay is soft and prints are made. One statement, not a string of them. God is here, or I and the Father are one, or there is no power opposed to God. Take one into the night. Take the same one into the morning. Not to persuade God, don't slip into that, but to seat authority, to dissolve the habit of two-ness, to weaken the reflex of fear until it has no office left to hold. Do this quietly, steadily. 30 days, 60, 90, until the shoulders learn what the lips are saying and the house recognizes its government. Don't forget this. There are no detached outer effects. As you abide in one presence, the picture shifts, not because you have forced it, but because law is law. Steps arise, and you take them without idolatry. Reports arrive, and you read them under God. Peace is not postponed to the verdict. Peace is the atmosphere in which verdicts are heard. Now then, let us end where all endings are beginnings. Make the inner decision to live as though God is omnipresent, because God is. That's the final truth. That's the last truth. There is no presence where God is not, and God is where you are. Yes. Yes.